Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the EMU Review. I am your host, Jason Heine, hanging out with you. Today is a fantastic day, and I'm super excited to be reviewing one of my all-time favorite video games. Yes, you can ask anybody. You can ask them, hey, what's your favorite game? And I think any casual gamer will tell you a title. But for the unique individuals that are a bit more hardcore than that, myself included, if I were to be asked what my favorite game is, I honestly could not tell you, because the perfect and my most favorite game does not exist. I like way too many titles to name them all off. I mean, come on. There are way too many consoles, way too many games, way too many genres of games. I mean, it's just too hard for a person like myself to name off one specific favorite title. But I do, however, have a handful of titles that I just absolutely adore. Killer Instinct being one of them. And if you don't believe me, let me prove that to you right here. So yes, I do have the factory sealed Killer Instinct t-shirt with the Killer Cut CD included. That was only available at E3 just before Killer Instinct's release. And yes, of course, I own not one, but two copies of Killer Instinct for the Super Nintendo. How about a factory sealed copy of the Killer Cut CD that was only available with the Super Nintendo release? Yeah, I got one of those too. So with the one included with the t-shirt, that would mean I have two copies. Let's see, what else are we forgetting here? Oh yeah, the factory sealed copy of Killer Instinct with the Killer Cuts CD included. Kablow, I got one of those as well. So that would make 3 games and 3 hard copies of the Killer Cuts CD. Oh no, not done. I saved the best for last. Ladies and gentlemen, I do own a dedicated Killer Instinct 1 arcade cabinet, as well as the sequel. I also own a dedicated Killer Instinct 2 arcade cabinet. So folks, as you can see, when it comes to Killer Instinct, I'm a little bit hardcore. It is an absolutely fantastic game. I have a lot of great things to discuss with this game, so let's get started. Now, I've learned something about Killer Instinct. Here's the thing, you either 1, you love it, or 2, you absolutely hate this game. I've learned this. So here's how this works. If you love the game, then that means you have figured out how to combine combos and pull off an ultra combo at the end to just sweeten the deal, because that feels amazing. If you are sitting here now saying, I hate this game, then that means you are on the receiving end of that combo. It's very true. If you play against your friend and you whoop their ass and don't give them any clue or any support how to play or pull off any moves in the game, you're gonna find that person will not be joining you ever again. I mean, really, just like any fighting game, it takes time to master and figure it out, but this game was a little different. The combo engine and combo theory that they used was very, very advanced and very difficult to master unless you sat down and read about it, honestly, or had a friend to help you through it. It was crazy. Alright, so let's slap attack your noggin with some knowledge. Killer Instinct is a fighting game developed by Rare, published by Midway and Nintendo in a collaborative effort. It was released in the arcades in 1994. So here we are again in 94, and we got rumors of this new Nintendo console coming out, and the same type of promotion and advertisement that they were doing with Cruisin' USA, they did with this one as well. They stated that it would be available on this new Ultra 64 console. Little promo intro looks like this.
Available for your home in 1995, only on Nintendo Ultra 64.
Interesting about that is that it never really officially did get ported to the Nintendo 64. I'll get into that in just a minute. This game was publicized quite a bit and did get just a ton of hype before its release. I mean, the Rare booth at E3 back in the day had full-on dancers. They had all these chicks dancing around. They had characters and costumes and outfits and lights and effects, and they had games you could like demo there. It was crazy what they did for the game. And let me tell you why everyone was getting super excited about this game. Killer Instinct was the first arcade game ever to incorporate an internal hard drive. Before this time, all arcade games would just use ROMs, EEPROMs, to store all the data. Sometimes they would have a separate soundboard, but this was the first one to have a dedicated hard drive. So with the hard drive, this meant they could store more data. Well, with more data would mean a better game all the way around. They could do more things with it, and that's exactly what they did. They were able to have a higher detail in the graphics, sound, backdrops, characters, sprites, everything, which is very, very robust. The characters were pre-rendered and designed all by SGI. The levels and backdrops and backgrounds also were very interactive. Depending on where you would stand on the level, different things would happen. You'd see movement and motion. I remember reading about it in a Nintendo Power. They were saying that the backgrounds are going to be like movies with full motion and animation. Crazy. And they were able to do all this because because all this data was stored on the external drive. It wasn't stored on the ROMs at all. KI also used the R4600 processor, and it was clocked at 100 megahertz. Now, back in the day, that was actually pretty damn quick, and you'll notice that in the gameplay. It's just solid 60 frames. It runs beautifully. Going back to level design, this was also one of the first arcade fighting games to incorporate a full 360-degree fighting arena. So with all this new innovation, they were able to create one of the best-looking arcade games for its time. So the characters are sharp, crisp, detailed. Everything looks amazing. Here's the full lineup.
Fulgor, Cinder, Glacius, Jago, Riptor, Saberwolf, Spinal, DJ Combo, Chief Thunder, Orchid,
and the final boss,
Idol.
Alright, so when KI was released, it was like a typical fighting game for the time, a bit of a hybrid. It took fighting elements from a good old-fashioned Street Fighter and also incorporated some of the finishing moves from Mortal Kombat. But as opposed to one health bar, now they gave you two. They also did not stop the fight and change screen after the player went down. Whatever player was defeated, they just stand back up, the health bar got refilled, and the fight continued on. It's a small but subtle thing that really helps the gameplay. But there's also quite a few things that distinguish this game different from all the rest. First of all, the combo engine. Doing certain button combinations at just the right time will execute a full-blown combo, resulting in some 12, 13, 14, even so on number of hits. But not every hit that the player would do was a button press. You see, they were kind of automated. When you press the button at the right time, it would execute that 3 or 4 hit automatically for you. So let's just say, for instance, Glacius, because, you know, he's my dog. So to do his like 13, 14 hit combo only requires to do 4 different individual button combinations. So once you figure out the combo engine and figure out the specific moves for an individual player, this game becomes complete ownage. Yeah. Each character does have 2 finishing moves they can do. This was called a no mercy move in earlier versions, and latter versions they called them a danger move. When the time came to finish him, earlier versions said this:
Show no mercy.
And then later revisions of the game said this:
Danger, danger, danger.
And that voice is pretty freaking awesome. Another move that they incorporated into the game to give helpless opponents getting their butts whooped, something called
Combo Breaker.
But one of my favorite finishing moves is something called a humiliation, where it makes your opponent dance like a freak. I love it.
Humiliation.
So like I said, Killer Instinct never officially made it to the Nintendo 64 as they wanted, but they did, however, port it over to the Super NES. This is a great game, and I was blown away when it came home to the consoles, but it does have its problems. Think about this real quick. They didn't port it to the 64 because hardware limitations, so they decided to port it to the Super NES? I don't know. I think they just wanted to give people something, because later on down the road, the 64 did get a KI title called KI Gold, which is basically KI2 in the flesh with some different effects and added moves and stuff like that. But getting back to the Super NES, I'm gonna show some footage of it here. This game, unfortunately, was heavily downsampled. Huge chunks of the graphic detail were removed. The character sizing had to be reduced. All the awesome 3D panoramic quote-unquote movie stages had to be completely removed into a 2-dimensional perspective. They did, however, do some tricky things with some scaling in Mode 7 in there to make the stages look interesting. And to top it all off, of course, it's gonna be audio related because I am that guy. The audio in the game was so reduced and so sampled down. And to tell you the truth, the audio is the worst part of the game. It sounds so bad. It sounds like 16 kilobit mono MP3. That's how bad it sounds. But despite the things they had to do to make the game playable on the Super NES hardware, they did add some pretty sweet features. They did offer a tournament multiplayer mode. It's like Knockout, basically. A practice mode that I spent hours with practicing and training. It's great. And very detailed options for button mapping and computer difficulty. It was also packed with that Killer Cut CD for free. Pretty nice. This game has has an amazing following, and there are still a ton of dedicated and loyal Killer Instinct fans out there, myself included, yo! And I want to give a shout out to Chris, the owner of KillerInstinctOnline.net. This is the best Killer Instinct resource website on the internet, period. Every resource you could ever want to know or see or have about Killer Instinct, it is here. Don't waste time. If you're into KI, after this video, go check it out. I'll put a link to it in the info bar. Alright friends, and to show my love and appreciation for Killer Instinct, I spent about 48 hours and I worked on a remix of the main theme to the game. I'm gonna make this available to everybody. It's a free download. Check out my other video I have right below this one. You could listen to it in full, but just send me an email if you want and I'll get it to you. Peace!